All right. Hey, there we are. Is that us?
No, that's not us.
No, that's not us. Where'd that come from? Refresh. Ah, where's our video? Go to Reel 8. There. Oh, it's us. Good. All right, we did it. Hi, my name is Jen, and welcome to May I Ask a Question, which is our Stack Overflow Q&A project that I'm usually doing with Chris Manson, who's away on vacation this week. And so we have a special guest.
Hey, my name is Ashlen. I'm a developer at Zipguard. I mostly work in Drupal development and front-end work here at Zipguard.
Awesome.
So it's great to be here.
Thank you for joining. So Ashlen doesn't work in Ember day to day, so we are going to be covering a couple more meta topics about Stack Overflow. So first of all, one thing I want to highlight is that I've noticed a trend where some Ember questions are getting answered and they're getting at least decent answers. I'll say I would like to think that most of my answers are like at least
I think you give good
decent.
answers.
And one of the things that's really demoralizing about doing Stack Overflow for Ember is not that people are mean, because our community is awesome and everybody is nice, who I've met mostly, but that you sort of answer a question and it goes into silence. And so one thing that you can do to help, even if you're not up for answering questions, is whenever you see good answers or decent answers, or if it's the only answer and you think it's correct, give it an upvote, because Stack Overflow has this like point system. Let's see, reputation. I think it's reputation levels, yeah. So as you get a certain number of points, you can do certain things. So when I first started on Stack Overflow this past October, I was really dismayed because I couldn't even comment on questions and ask clarifying questions. So, and I certainly wasn't comfortable yet with following this really specific format for answers that I felt like I was supposed to follow. And so by upvoting people, you're not only saying like thank you, but you're also giving them the ability to do some of the moderation things.
I think it's also some validation that like you're contributing and someone's noticing your contribution.
Exactly.
As well.
Yeah. Well, because ultimately what we want to do is help other people out for answering questions. And although intellectually I know like, oh, they probably saw my answer, it's good to have some confirmation.
Yeah.
So I think what we'll do first is we'll look through. I've already gone through and upvoted a whole bunch of things over the past week to try to give things a little bit of a boost, and thanks to everybody else who has done the same. There's also been a little bit of movement, basically active. If you look at active, you can also see which things have been edited and updated recently, and I've gone through those as well, because some of the things that have been done are editing old past examples, and those are good, and those should get
it's always great when you go back and you update something with more relevant data. Yeah. It should totally get like voted.
And so first things first, I got a notification from some back and forth on one of these questions, so I want to try to tackle this. So this question was from this past week, not the live stream, where this user is trying to use an add-on called Ember Models Table. And whenever there's an add-on question, a lot of times the first thing I want to do is look it up to actually get an idea of what it's supposed to be like. And this is like a really neat add-on, actually. It lets you put your models straight into a table. Let me find common table. It lets you put your Ember model straight into a common table and has this really cool interactive documentation where you can toggle on and off certain settings. See this thing in real time.
Yeah, and then it like sort of works. That's really awesome.
So cool.
Why can't more documentation be like that?
I don't know. There's another library that's called like UI Slider or something that I really like.
That one's really good too. Yeah, I use that one.
I want to see sort of what's supposed to even be going on here, and this is neat because now I know about this add-on. This might be something that I use in the future. So this person's question is that they were trying to get a column to show up that would be a link to the record. So this is a case where someone has nested routing, and they weren't really able to get the syntax going for the route for the route name that lets them link to it. So I just want to take a moment to look and see. So I answered that they were using this format for their route direction. And this isn't how routes look in the Ember router. So I was thinking, like, if I was building an add-on library, I would probably match whatever the convention is of the framework
that you're using.
Exactly. Yeah. I wouldn't create my own syntax. So I looked that up on the add-on, and it didn't really have a ton of documentation there. But I did install this add-on and give it a try in a dummy app.
How did it work out?
It worked out fine.
Nice.
So I suggested, like, hey, I think what you really want to use is this dot notation, which is what's used in the link to helper in Ember. And let's see. Can you share your example you tried? Okay, so my example's on my work computer because I was looking at stuff after work one day. Is it on my work computer? Wait, let me think about that. Because there was one evening that I stayed late and knocked out a couple things after work. I might be on this computer. Let me take a look. So I keep a dummy app around that I use for testing things like this. Let me see if it's here. Or maybe I used the super rentals route. Okay, it's not here. Let me take a look. So another good dummy app for testing is there's an official tutorial on the Ember guides called Super Rentals, and oh, this might be it. Package.json. Hey, there we go. Yay. Okay, so let me spin this up real quick. So I really like using the dummy app because it's something that has some pre-existing functionality, so I don't need to like make up examples myself.
Oh, nice. And some of it's already there, and it's populated, so it makes it easy to run with what the data that's already existing.
Yeah,
that's true.
And it's maintained with a good testing suite. Oh, nice. And it is kept in step more or less with the latest Ember releases. Sometimes we skip a few, but that way, you know, even my apps at work are on older long-term support versions. And so this lets me be familiar with and use and test things against the latest version of Ember instead of, you know, waiting to get that experience when I've upgraded.
Right.
All right, so let's take a look. I'll keep that documentation open, actually. Yeah, my poor computer is real sad. Okay, if I remember right, I made it like cannot handle streaming and this at the same time. Wait, where'd my code go? Come back. I lost it. Okay, hang on. Let me just. Maybe I closed it. Why would I do that? Because it's too early in the morning.
Your coffee hasn't kicked in just yet.
No.
You know, but it's okay. It will at some point.
Okay, it looks like I made a route called Bricks and Brick because someone had a Lego example as well. I was actually answering two things at once.
Multitasking at its
All right,
finest.
and so if we go to the bricks, we go to the bricks route, and I have made some dummy data. Let me make this bigger. That is in the Ember data store. And if we hover over this and you look way down in the corner,
see bricks.
You can see, yep, the dynamic segment there. And so my router looks like this. So this bottom route here is going to be bricks. Let me come with this out. Bricks, brick, one. But the actual notation and a link to helper will be link to, I think it's the route first, bricks.brick, and then like the name, link name. It's that or it's the other way around, I never remember. So that's what a link to helper notation would look like for a dynamic segment. And that's what we can see. Bricks/brick/1. So in the router, if you were going to do link to, it's bricks.brick. So looking back here at the, what did I do? I did handlebars. Where did I put my template? Okay, so did I make a component? I probably made a component because that would be smart. Oh, I didn't. Okay, so this is the model table add-on. Wow, there's a lot of things here. Where it did I'm looking for the route name. Oh, I did make a component. This isn't the add-on. Ha. Okay. Models table. Did I do that? Where's the route name? Oh. It's an attribute on the data. I forgot. So in my route hook, how did I do this? Oh, okay, that's right. So the route name is a column attribute. So I'm passing columns into this add-on, and the column is where you can designate if something should be a link. Route name is whatever. So what I'm gonna do is update my existing answer to be a little bit more specific. Let's see. So this is your. All right, so I want to, and here are the columns. And because bricks are not going to make any sense to this person,
You're gonna
I'm going to do I'm going to do user for lack of a better example, because I don't really have an understanding of what this person's structure of their own thing is, that's something that I could that's something that I could ask a clarifying question for. All right, so I posted the router. I have my records. Is there any other information that I guess I could put? I'll put like half. I'll put the important bits of this. Route name. Cannot type route name. Okay. Template. So one thing that we can do here as well is I can actually push this code up to GitHub so that this person can run it themselves and see it working.
You could do that. I think that would be helpful.
So I think that's what I'll do next. But on Stack Overflow, it's best if your answer can be complete without the external links. So you definitely want to include external links. You want to link to examples. But if all of the links in your answer were dead, would that answer still be useful to somebody?
Probably not.
And so you have to write it in such a way that like it's okay
if they don't get to run the code.
Yeah,
that makes total sense.
So I think I don't remember if I can use triple backticks or not. Let's look. Oh, it did. It worked. Nope, it didn't. Never mind. This is annoying. Okay. Oh, I didn't actually finish my triple backticks. Whatever. We'll put this like that. Okay. And then we make sure that I changed all the things that need to be changed. Oh, this is still, I want to change that to user. Is it user or users? Where's my router? It's the plural. It's users / the dynamic segment. Is that right? Yep. Okay. All right, so I'm going to save that.
How long does it normally take you to answer a question? What are the ranges?
Oh, boy. So this one took a lot longer because I actually had to make an example myself. I couldn't just look at the documentation. So some answers are just as simple as I look at the documentation and it's not that the user or the person who's asking the question, they probably looked at that documentation too.
You actually know how to interpret it.
Yeah, if I maybe have different or more context than they do, sometimes that's all that's needed. And then sometimes I have to actually look at the source code for the add-on or whatever. Once I have to make a real example, we're talking about like, at that point, at least half an hour, to be honest.
Okay.
I would say. This one is definitely more in the order of half an hour. I have spent longer than that on some questions. And then there was one that I answered recently that I was like, oh, this is so easy. And I answered it really quickly. Actually, I'll pull it up. We can look at it.
Okay.
I feel bad. But anyway, this is why Stack Overflow is so hard. It's like my guilt levels. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I misled somebody or did the wrong thing. But
and that happens, but you tried. Sometimes I feel like the intention matters.
Anyway, so some of these take a really long time, but also some of them, particularly the ones that aren't a rabbit hole of a specific question, but they take a while for me to write, some of those are potentially good blog posts.
Oh.
And so, for example, one of the blog posts that I wrote that's, it's like, it's not one of the most popular one, but it's the one that the most people have said, like, oh my gosh, thanks for writing that. That helped me a lot. Is I wrote one on how to do a range slider by hand.
I read that, yeah.
That one came from some Slack Q&A that I'd spent like so much time on with this person because I had walked that path myself before.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a brand new problem to me, but like trying to help them walk through and debug their specific application of it was hard. And I was thinking, like, if there was just a reference for it, we wouldn't have needed to walk through step by step because they could have just read through.
Right.
And then said, like, okay, I'm going to apply this to what I'm doing, as opposed to like having to explain step by step what they're doing so that I can help with it.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I edited that. We could make a couple changes here. So I am going to make this users and user because otherwise this isn't going to make any sense. Users. While I'm doing this, I was thinking we could chat for a minute about like kind of the why bother with Stack Overflow. And yeah. So Ashlen and I went to coding bootcamp together. You're 1 year ago. I'm 2 years ago.
Yeah.
What did it help? Like, what did you notice as a new person working on Stack Overflow?
Really, really intimidating. Like that feeling of working on Stack Overflow, or like trying to ask a question, or just sort of mustering up the courage to ask a question, is really, really intimidating. Because you just sort of read how either you don't get a pleasant answer, or someone's kind of a little snarky, jerky, or maybe you just didn't ask the question right because you didn't know how to ask a question properly.
Mm-hmm.
And at times, like sort of going back to the documentation piece, it doesn't matter how many instructions there are on how to write a good question. Sometimes it's just practice that will get you into writing a good question, because you're already coming in as a new developer doing something you don't know, and then on top of it all, you realize that you don't really know how to ask questions properly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like two things that you don't know already that you're trying to perfect and get good at. So it took me a while to sort of go back in. To date, I think have only asked maybe one question, maybe.
I haven't asked any.
But that's only because I've realized something that my instructors used to say. It's like whenever we'd work on projects, they'd tell us to check the issue queue before we asked a question, because the question had already been asked.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a while to at least learn how to read other questions and interpret and extrapolate what they're trying to say and apply it to what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because for the most part, the answer is the same. It may just be the part that I would get stuck on would just be the context of it. It would be different, and I didn't know how to like extrapolate that and apply the answer to that to my problem. But I learned, and it was great. And I think it's a great resource now, but it's definitely a work in progress.
What would you say would have made it more approachable when you were new?
I think if we had sort of almost like a form submission type of question, like breaking down the different parts of a question, that would be really helpful, like a section for your like question, your example, and just sort of like quick reminders on, did you remember to add a snippet? Did you add additional context and things like that in a friendlier fashion, rather than just, I don't know, a bunch of different users barking at you that you're not writing your question properly, or just closing out your question because it's a duplicate or something like that. I just wish a little bit more humanish interaction would be nice.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to be a new developer.
It sure is. So it's interesting that you mentioned the form idea, because that's something that the Stack Overflow people put in their like we want to be more friendly to new developers post was that there should be more explicit guidance on how to ask a question. And like, honestly, if that was well written, that's a kind of template that like, you know, if you open it up and it's like templated out, that's something I could actually see being used as like a default template in other projects.
Yeah.
Right? And so then now we have not a standard, but like some sort of best practices language around how, what should go into
a question.
An issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially in bigger companies where like you don't just, you know, poke somebody on the shoulder to be like, how do I do this?
How do I do this? Exactly.
All right, so let's see. I changed a whole bunch of file names, which I will say is, oops, I missed. No, this is test folder. It's dangerous. If you're working on a production app, don't just go change the file names. I mean, to be honest, what I do instead is I generate new routes and I copy stuff over because particularly when you're working with nested folders, if you rename the routes nested folders, you get the weirdest bugs. Oh, they're really bad. They're really weird because all of the mapping breaks down.
Oh, that is wild. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the kinds of errors that get thrown are like unexpected and weird and different and special to your app, and it's not an immediate and obvious thing because the Ember app is trying to like dynamically interpret your folder structure and things like that. So don't do this for real Z's.
Don't do this at home, kids.
Yeah, just on, you know, this example here. And let's see if I can do this. That's gonna take a while. So while I'm doing that, I can pull up where this. So you asked how long do questions take to answer. So I looked at this one, and this person's using a computed property, and most of the time when you use a computed property, you pass in strings to watch. So like you have a variable, say on my template, my variable is called like username or something. And whenever username changes, the computed property should recalculate so that, you know, it maybe capitalizes the first letter or something like that. And you usually put that string as the first part of the function. It's like the first argument. And this person had an error like you cannot call class as a function. So when I looked at this, I thought right away like, oh, they're missing the string that gets watched and it's trying to call the function first or something weird is happening. And so I replied as much saying that, you know, you're missing an argument in your computed property. You know, it needs something to watch. And I had said like, that's not optional because I had not actually, I could swear that I have done something like this before and gotten that kind of error. And I was like, oh, you always have to have this thing. Turns out maybe that was a red herring and that whatever problem I was experiencing that day that made me believe that computed properties always need that string as a first argument, I was not correct. And so Chris Runspired commented and was like, hey, this is not actually necessary or required. They're not mandatory. It's you know, it's what you want to use when the computer property should rerun. And I got downvoted, and then I was like, oh, I feel bad about that. But my answer was incorrect, sorry. His response was correct. And so I didn't really have, my answer is now completely invalid because like that wasn't the actual problem. But I did go back and edit and say like, this doesn't seem to be the cause of the error, but like I'll leave it here. And I took out the sentence that said that like this is required and things like that. And it's kind of a challenge working on Stack Overflow because that's literally, it's just how the site works. And now that I know that, that's a learning moment. So even though it trips off my like I feel guilty about everything alarms, it's like I learned a thing. I tried to help somebody. somebody helped me come to a new understanding.
Yep.
And so, like, trying to reframe that instead of feeling bad about getting downvoted for an obviously incorrect answer.
Right. I think that's
It's
a challenge.
hard.
It is hard.
It's hard.
It is hard. So it's a challenge. And I think that it's fair. Because as a developer, you want to know when you're wrong.
Yeah.
You want to do the right thing, and you don't want to send out. You don't want to give people misinformation either about development. I feel like there's enough misinformation out there right now that.
Yeah.
So I totally understand. You take in the learning moment, but then you're like, oh, but I got downvoted.
Yeah. Oh, and I worked so hard to get those points. I've answered so many questions.
Why do we have to get points to begin with?
Well, so this is something I actually talked about with a friend, was that it helps if you think of Stack Overflow as an answer curation service. And so you think about curated collections. A curated newsletter is choosy about the content that goes in and gets shown.
Right.
You know, when you go to the library, the librarian picks which things go on top of the bookshelf as like the good books. Right. And so if you think of it as that, in order to do curation, inherently some people have more powers to edit the collection, the library, you know, whatever, the newsletter, than other people. Because if you go to a simple like up and down upvotes thing, that has some benefits because everyone can participate. Right. But it also has some downsides, which is that the stuff that floats to the top isn't necessarily like good quality content. Not that curation makes that happen either, but like they're different mechanisms.
Right. I got it.
And they raise different things.
Right.
So that's kind of how I try to think of it when I'm working on stuff on the site.
Nice.
So I think we should wrap up.
I think so too. Meetings to get to today.
Yeah. But I'm going to push up that code, the example that we worked on once I make it work. And because I probably didn't rename everything, right?
I think you did.
I don't think I did.
I think you missed something, but you said it was like a test.
I don't think I renamed all the things. But been there, done that. I always miss something. But we'll be back next week. Chris will be back, and thank you very much for joining us on the live stream today. Let's wave into infinity. Ooh. Oh no, wait.